On this week's show, Georgia Southern men's and women's basketball hosts Monroe and Lafayette. We'll have highlights. Georgia Southern football adds a familiar name to the staff. And Eagle baseball will open up this weekend against Georgia. We'll hear from Rodney Hennon. All that and more as we welcome you inside the Eagle's Nest. Welcome inside the Eagle's Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, we knew the importance of this past weekend, getting back on the winning track for the Georgia Southern men's basketball team. Oddly enough, the women actually end up being the one to win a fairly handedly game. The guys lost a close one and then kind of got shot out of the gym by Lafayette, who we were wondering how good they are. I think we saw it.
Yeah, they definitely are a very good team. They deserve their spot at the top of the conference standings. And now for the Georgia Southern women, they're still, toiling about there near the bottom of the conference. They've definitely looked like an improved team over the last couple of weeks. It's going to take more than that to get to where they want to be. I think that a low seed is pretty much assured at this point in the conference tournament, but who knows? All they can do is keep plugging away, maybe get another win here or there, maybe get a win out in New Orleans to give them some momentum moving forward into next season. As for the men, it's beginning to look a whole lot like last season when they were leading the conference by a couple of games, and then they seemingly hit a wall halfway through. This looks a little different, though. Last year, it was just inconsistent play. It looked like the level of play went down. The injuries started to mount. This time around, it just seems like this team can't get into a rhythm. They've been one of the best shooting teams the last couple of years. Now they're the team that takes the most shots, but makes the fewest. Their percentages just aren't there. I don't know if it's a matter of taking bad shots or not waiting for the right shots, but it's starting to show. The rebounding hasn't been as good over the last couple of games, and other teams have just started to take it to the Eagles.
Yeah, you mentioned the rebounding, and it looks like the post play that looked early in the season like Monte Glenn may have taken a big step forward, and then you got contributing minutes from guys like Coy Simmons and maybe Gladden for a little bit. But it has not. It looks like that's regressed a little bit there. And then it seems like the big three cannot be the big three on a consistent basis. And that is Ike Smith, Tukey Brown, and Mike Hughes. You might get a great game from one, a good game from another, and a poor game from one. And then Quan Jackson has kind of been up and down as well. It just seems like you can't get those three guys that you really need to contribute and then get something from the post.
Well, I think that of the two problems you talked about, the inside game and then the guards being able to shoot, I think that the latter is causing the former. I don't think that it's been worse efforts from the front court. Monte Glenn still looking good most nights, still getting close to a double-double most nights, and I think that Sean O'Connell has come on a little stronger in the last month. But when you're not hitting your shots, when you're not playing with a lead, this isn't a team that's built to run the ball through the inside. When you force it there, it makes things a lot tougher on them. You see those front court guys start to make more turnovers, fewer good plays. It's when those shots are falling that they're a little freer to operate. That's when you see those double-doubles pile up. So it's a matter of just getting all the parts of the machine working. We've seen it over the last couple of years. This is a team that's way more talented than they've been playing the last couple of weeks.
All right, well, let's get back and take a look at some of the highlights from the men and the women from this past weekend against the teams from Louisiana. Georgia Southern women looking for only their second conference win of the year, taking on UL Monroe second half, and the Eagles trying to pull away. Sarah Moore inside for two. Monroe answers. Carissa Moody inside for two. The Eagles right back. On the break, Alexis Brown, two of her 18 points. London Archer responds on the other end, but the Eagles too much. Rianne Beeman with the bucket, and Georgia Southern notches only their second conference win of the year in impressive fashion, winning 75-45. The men's game starting with a moment of silence in honor of former Georgia Southern football standout Edwin Jackson, who was hit and killed by a drunk driver last week near Indianapolis. To the game we go. Monroe hot from long range to open things up. Travis Munnings with the honors. Seconds later, it's Munnings again, this time from the other side. Same result. Georgia Southern trying to respond. Ike Smith going to connect on the triple for the Georgia Southern Eagles. Then Southern goes inside. Monte Glenn gets the rock and proceeds to nail the little hook from out front. But the Warhawks remain hot from beyond the arc. Sam McDaniel cans a three on the other end. The Eagles right back. Mike Hughes fires one up from long range. His three-point attempt is good. Minutes later, it's Quan Jackson getting in on the act. He gets a good look from three-point land. But the visitors always had an answer. Michael Ertl with the fadeaway jumper on the other end, and Monroe wins this one in overtime by a final of 66-64. Colorful game Saturday, breast cancer awareness, seeing plenty of pink as the Eagles host Louisiana Lafayette. Troy Swain starts it out for the visitors. Rian Beeman answers on the other end for the Eagles as she drives in, gets this one to go. Later, it's Amira Atwater going in strong for two. But the Raging Cajuns in control. Simone Fields hits inside. Later, it's Fields once again. Aliyah Belcher tries to answer. She hits the jumper, but Lafayette too much. And they win this one by a final of 58-48. To the guys' game we go, and a great crowd on hand. The Eagles hot out of the gates. Ike Smith hits the runner in the lane. Later, Smith will drain the three-pointer. He finished with 25 points. Later, it's Quan Jackson burying the three. One of four Eagle players in double figures. The Raging Cajuns start to heat up. Jonathan Stove hot here. He'd have 25. Next, it's Jerkins Davis driving for two, cutting the lead to one. The Eagles right back. Smith drives and throws down the one-hander. But Bryce Washington answers with the reverse. Tukey Brown out most of the first half with foul trouble, but David Lee Jones responds nicely with the three. Jake Alsmiller adds a three himself. Justin Miller on the other end for the Cajuns with the hook shot. Smith then with another three. Jones then in the corner for three more. But Louisiana Lafayette heats up before the half. Washington, two more of his 18 as he slams it home. Then Malik Marchetti for three. And finally, Marchetti will hit another just before the half. And the Raging Cajuns win a shootout 102-91. So next up for the guys, ESPN2 game against Georgia State. That game taking place at 9 o'clock Friday night. And then the women play Saturday afternoon against Georgia State as well. All right, well, let's shift gears a little bit, Mike, and head outdoors to the baseball diamond where Georgia Southern actually opens up the season, believe it or not, heading on the road to Georgia. Then they've got Georgia Tech coming in for a single game. Your thoughts on what you see for the baseball season?
Well, I think that Georgia Southern, as always, expects to be in contention at the end of the year. We really care to forget how last season ended, a couple of outs away from clinching the conference championship, going to the regionals. Didn't get an at-large bid that, frankly, I thought they deserved last year. But all they can do is, reset it and try it again. And this year they're missing a big hole in their lineup. Ryan Cleveland, 50 home runs in his career for Georgia Southern, including the one that almost sent them into the postseason last year. He's gone, but you've got a couple of guys stepping up. The good news is that last year, you look at the batting average, if you care about that. I know it's up in the air what stats people like these days, but batting average usually means that you're hitting it well. And last year, the three highest averages on the team, all three were freshmen. All three of them are back. You've got some bullpen issues that might need to be taken care of. A lot of guys disappearing from the back end of the bullpen last season that was locked down. But the one thing they think they can lean on is that weekend rotation. You've got a young one, but probably one of the best in the conference in Seth Schumann, Brian Eichhorn, Chase Cohen. You can expect them to be running up there every weekend and logging a lot of innings.
All right, well, we had a chance to talk with Eagle head coach Rodney Hennon about his outlook for the season and the big series coming up this weekend.
There's always excitement, and you worked hard since school started in August, putting a team together and getting after it in the off season, and you're always excited about competing against somebody else. Yeah, I think it's always good, when you can start the season off with in-state rivals, as we are, 3 games in Athens and then the home opener with Georgia Tech, and real test for our team right out of the gate to go on the road and play in a tough environment. And that's what you want to do. You want to challenge your team. You want to find out where you're at, and I think we'll have an opportunity to do that early on in the season. Well, only 2 seniors, but we do have some guys that have some experience and have played in some big games and in some big situations. So, I feel good about the leadership of this club. I think we have some very talented players that are young and just need to be thrown out to the fire, and they're going to get a chance to do that this week.
Hey, Miss Thompson, everything's fine. It's going to be no problem. I'll have you done in a few minutes.
My name is Paisley Nordhoff, part owner of Complete Car Care, and I want you to come see me.
So for the Eagles, Friday, Saturday, Sunday on the road at Athens, and then they'll open up the season at home Tuesday night against Georgia Tech. All right, well, before we go, big news out of Georgia Southern football. They just can't let us go a week without talking about football, and this was a pretty big announcement, at least one of the biggest names all time at Georgia Southern. Coming home, Adrian Peterson coming back to take a job there for the Eagle football team.
Yeah, he's going to be joining the staff not as an on-field coach, but as the director of student-athlete services, basically serving as the guy who relates to the players, keeps up the relationships with the coaching staff, keeps the coaching staff informed on how the guys are doing in day-to-day life, whether it's grades, whether it's adjusting to college life, whether it's adjusting to playing on a new team for all the new recruits. And, well, everybody relates to everyone in different ways, but I've talked to AP a couple of times. Very personable person, and when there is a difference of opinion, when he needs to be heard, I think it's a pretty persuasive argument to just point up at the stadium and say, maybe listen to the guy whose number's up there forever.
This is true. All right, well, that's great news. You bring guys like TJ Anderson in, who was a fan favorite. Vic Cabral's over here now. You've got Adrian Peterson. I think it looks as though Chad Lunsford's really putting a good staff together and putting together some people that are going to build some excitement for the Eagle program. I had a chance to talk with Adrian the other day, and he said they're moving down in the summer. They're excited. They've been living up in Chicago, and I think
you don't want to move here right now instead of sticking it out in Chicago.
I know. They're going to stick it out for the kids for school, but then coming down in the summer. And I think he's, from a guy from Alachua, Florida, I think that winters in Chicago was a little tough to get used to. But anyway, great to see Adrian back in the fold. All right, well, that'll wrap things up for now. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. Thanks for joining us. Hope to see you again soon.